Hi, good morning. I'm Babz Rawls Ivy.
And I'm Jeff Grant.
Welcome to Criminal Justice Insider with Babz Rawls Ivy and Jeff Grant.
Morning, Babs.
Good morning, Jeff Grant. How are you?
Good. It's so good to see you on day 2 of our Connecticut snowstorm. Day 3, maybe.
Happy snow day.
Yeah, you too.
Day two. Day two. It happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Happy snow day. Happy snow day to Lynn Springer and
Andrew
Andrew
Kaplan.
Kaplan.
Yeah.
Thank you to the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven for sponsoring this wonderful show. I appreciate that.
This is our last show of the calendar year.
Oh my gosh, it is for 2020.
Yep, and we are halfway through season 4 already. Can you imagine?
Oh, it seems like we just got started.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Season 4?
Yep.
Oh. Well, we are delighted today. Well, before we talk about our wonderful guest, Quan Huynh. What's up with you, Jeff? Any news?
It is delightfully quiet right now, for the most part. I'm on hiatus from the other podcast, White Collar Week, but we are.
Oh, are you?
Okay. Oh yeah, till mid-January. But
okay.
We're posting the best of White Collar Week.
Okay, I see everybody got mugs. I don't have a mug yet.
You got to come on White Collar Week, dude.
I'm not.
If you'll come on and talk white collar, I would love to have you on.
I don't think I've been invited, but I'll just.
You don't know. You told me white collar is not your thing.
No, Jeffy, Jeff.
Did I get it wrong?
Yes, you did.
Okay, well then you are invited. Chloe will reach out to you and set it up with you. You are, you're my main squeeze.
Hey, oh, come on. Plus, you need some color.
See, I don't know if anyone's ever gotten it yet. White collar. See here it is, Babs. White collar and white coat. Well, usually it's white collar up there.
I know. I was like, dog, he needs some black people on that show. Some people of color. Shoot, I'm coming on.
I'm gonna have Chloe set you up at the beginning of January.
All right, good. I didn't say I wouldn't come on. What I said was, I would happily come on. Come on your show, Jeff. I support you. So
okay.
Anyway, so our guest today, I'm delighted because we have author Quan Huynh.
Right.
Was often described as mighty warrior, a magician, and a mountain of goodness. That's a wonderful way to be described. He is a best-selling author of Sparrow in the Razor Wire, Finding Freedom from Within While Serving a Life Sentence. His book was written for men that are doing long or life-term sentences. And in it, he shares how he found his freedom years before he was even paroled. He works as the senior post-release program manager for Defy Ventures, a nonprofit helping those with a criminal past transform their lives through journey of entrepreneurship. After spending 22 years in and out of correctional institutions, Quan was paroled from a life sentence in 2015 and created his first company 6 months later. The following year, he received the Peace Fellowship Award for his work with the Alternatives to Violence Project. And Quan has been featured in Entrepreneur, PBS NewsHour, and numerous other publications and podcasts. So welcome, Quan. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Quan. It's good to see you. It's 6 a.m. out there in Orange County, California?
Yes, it is. It's still dark. The sun hasn't even come up yet.
You look wide awake and ready.
Well, I'm ready. Yeah.
Somebody wakes me up at 6 o'clock. I'm not looking that good. Well, thank you. So, all right, tell us your story. Tell us the. I love that you said that you get right to it in your book about how you. And when I just read, was that you figured out how to be free even doing time. That freedom, that you did not allow time to do you. That you understood that you needed to free yourself even before you started doing this, even while you were doing this time. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, it wasn't always that way. I think I was just looking like I had a life sentence and I'm just going to exist. I'm just going to end up dying in here. It took about 10, 12 years into my life sentence before the light started to come on. Several things had happened at that time. My grandfather had passed away. My little niece was born. It's my brother's daughter, and I got a picture of her, and she just looked like a spitting image of my brother. And it took me back to childhood, and then I started reflecting, like, how did my life end up this way? How did I end up here when I was just a little boy like my brother? And how did I end up thinking it was okay to shoot and kill another human being and just not even look at myself in the mirror and say there's something wrong? So that began that process. And I've always been a bookworm, and I was reading a lot throughout my prison sentence. So one book led me to another. I loved a lot of books on business and entrepreneurship, and by that time I got into books on personal development. But then one book led me to another, and it ended up on the books of the saints. Particularly read stories about saints that had, about. I was really interested in ones that had failures in their lives, and then how did they come back from it? And it just planted the seed for me of how can I make a legacy of myself, even if I'm supposed to die in prison. And that's where that little seed began. And it was one morning on the yard, like after all these readings and your musings and just teachings. And I stood there, and it was early morning, probably like a little bit later than this because the sun was barely coming up. And I just thought, like, why does prison have to be punishment? Why can't it be a place that I could remake myself, even if I'm supposed to die here? And just that small, subtle shift in my thinking, it made all the difference in the world. The sun was coming up, and I could feel that warmth on the little blades of grass. I could see the individual drops of dew, and up above me in the razor wire, there was a sparrow chirping. And I told everybody, like, I'd probably been chirping my whole prison term. I never heard it, but that day I heard it. And from that day, prison wasn't this cold, harsh, ugly place. It became a place where I felt I could connect with other human beings on their respective journeys. Some of them much further along, and some of them perhaps not even awakened yet. But that's where it began for me, that process where I go, okay, what can I learn about myself today? Or what can I make better about myself? Or how can I make this world a better place today? And that began that process.
So, Quan, why don't you take us back? Because we know you were born in Vietnam, then your family moved to Utah. So here you are, living in Utah as a Vietnamese family, which couldn't have been easy. Or certainly there weren't probably a lot of Vietnamese families there. So why don't you tell us about that? How did your family come over from Vietnam, and what was it like for you growing up, and ultimately led you to make some wrong turns?
Sure. I grew up in Provo, Utah. After we lost our country, we left Vietnam. I was probably only several months old. I unofficially, I would guess that we were probably the first Vietnamese family there in Utah, Provo, Utah, at least. Yeah. My brother and sister were born over there, and our family's raised Roman Catholic. Utah is predominantly Mormon and predominantly white, and this was after the Vietnam War. So I remember growing up, the vast majority of the people in Utah are very kind and loving, but I did experience instances of racism, or what I understand to be racism now, and those are what really stuck with me. I remember one in particular when I was very young, maybe 9 years old. My brother and I were playing with our G.I. Joe action figures in the streams, and some older kids and some adults, maybe like their uncles or fathers or something, were at the top of the fence, like shouting down to us, like, "Get out of here, go back to your own country." And we said, "Come make us," being little kids. And then they jumped the fence and started chasing us and ran down. And we ran up the other side. I dropped some of my action figures, and my brother stopped to pick them up. And the kids came, and they shoved my brother, punched him, and started shoving dirt in his mouth. I stood there and cried, and they were just cheering. The adults were cheering the other kids on, and then my brother and I walked home. You know, my brother's face filled with dirt and everything. And when my father found out what happened, he just said, like, how could you let this happen to your brother? You know, you have to protect your family at all times. So that just put this sense of be like, damn, I failed my father, I failed my family, I failed my brother. Yeah. So those are one of the instances that I remember early on.
Mm-hmm. So what was your growing up like? Did it get better for you? Like what was the trajectory that got you to prison? Because you
Well,
were
around that
relatively
same
young.
well, thank you. Around that same year, my father was diagnosed with leukemia, and so I think up to that point, my father was my hero. You know, in Vietnam, he was an officer at the military academy of South Vietnam. He had actually come out to the United States before that, and trained with the American Special Forces. I forgot what program that was. So he knew about the United States. That's why when him and my mom came to the U.S., my mom had never seen snow, and my father goes, "Let's." This is that we asked for sponsorship to Utah just because there's snow there. Yeah, so that's why we ended up in Provo, Utah. Um, I mean, so growing up, my father, he created the Vietnamese Refugee Association in Provo, Utah. So he became quite famous in there, where people saw him on the news. He was an activist, and he basically created a nonprofit to help other Vietnamese families readjusting to their new country. So I remember as a little boy, I got to go on these long car rides with him to neighboring states like Wyoming or Colorado, you know, and he told me, because he worked in the coal mines, but he did this on the weekends. And I remember we sat in long lines. He helped people with DMV paperwork, Social Security, translating a bunch of things. And I asked him, like, he said, this is his weekend job. And I said, how much do you get paid? And he told me, I don't get paid for this. And that didn't make any sense to me as a little boy. But I got to go on long car rides with him. And that's what I enjoyed. I remember seeing that. So he was my hero growing up, especially, I guess he started gaining recognition, and there were like government officials that would come to the house, and they would tell my father, okay, they told me as a little boy, do you want to be just like your dad? Just all you have to do is graduate high school. We're going to put in a recommendation for you to go to West Point. You're going to be just like your father. You're going to be the first Vietnamese American in West Point. So that was my dream growing up. I want to go to West Point. I want to be like my dad. He gets diagnosed with leukemia, and suddenly that, you know, changes the whole dynamic of how I saw life and my father, because I thought he was invincible. He started going in and out of the hospital. And for me and my understanding at the time, it was like, okay, we'll just pray at church and he'll get better. And then he gets worse. And somehow I used to think that I'm to blame because I'm a bad kid. His condition gets worse. So we move out here to California because his side of the family lived out here and he wanted to be close to his family. So we settled first in Santa Barbara, but then we moved out here to Orange County. And a couple years after that, his condition started getting worse and he ends up passing away on Mother's Day and on the day of our first communion. I remember leading up to that first communion day, my mom had said, your father's going to pass away. The doctor said he doesn't have much longer to live. And, you know, looking back now, I was in denial. So was imagine my brother and younger sister. And I just said, I'm going to pray. When I first get to eat that bread, I'm going to pray and I'm going to ask God to let my father live. And the morning of our first communion, I woke up, I went into the bathroom, and my younger sister tells me, Dad died last night. Ooh. So, yeah, so for me, it felt like so unfair. I was like, okay, why did there must be really something wrong with me. That's why God killed my dad, just so he doesn't have to grant this prayer. So I remember just going through the motions that day at church, getting the bread, and just this hollowness inside, knowing that my dad is dead, yet everybody's celebrating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was when I was 13.
Wow.
So what? Tell us about your life that led up to the time when you committed a homicide.
Yeah. Well, after that, I mean, none of us really grieved his death. I mean, we didn't talk about it. I mean, my family's, you know, my mother never asked like, how are you feeling? We never got to process his death. So I just shoved it into a dark corner and just went about, okay, I'm gonna do what I can to make my mom proud. And you know, in the back of my mind, I go, I'm gonna make my dad proud. I'm gonna still go to West Point. So I try to do well in school. But by that time, you know, we're on welfare. We had no money, or my mom had to finally get a job, and we just started trying to find our way. My brother and I got mixed up with other kids running around on the streets, and that began us going down a different path. In high school, we had some run-ins with some local skinhead kids, and my senior year, some of those skinheads had called my house and threatened my mom or my sister. They said, "We're gonna come kill you, Gooks, and we're gonna come kill your whole family," and things like that. So my brother came and told me about it with some of my friends. I was working at a Subway sandwich shop at the time,
Mm.
and I asked my coworker, "Hey, do you know where these skinheads live?" And she said, "Yeah." So she drew me a map. By that time, my friends, or a little party crew of friends, one of them had a small handgun, and we used to just go to parties, and he carried it with him, and we just thought we were all the hardest kids on the block. So we're sitting there, and I give the map to them. I said, "This is where she says he lives." They said, "Okay, we'll come back tonight at 10 o'clock to pick you up, and we'll go shoot up the house." I said, "Okay, yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll shoot their house. They should be threatening our family, like that." So we felt justified in it. I get off work that night. My brother and my friends never came. So when I went home, I found out that they went to a local arcade and found another kid to show them the house. And my friend ended up going up to the house, knocking on the door, and they opened it, and he ran inside and shot 3 people. Fortunately, they all survived, but we got arrested within a couple weeks, and I was arrested for a conspiracy to commit 3 attempted murders. I was 17, I think my brother was 15, and that began that path of me getting arrested the first time, going into juvenile hall, ended up at the California Youth Authority, got out more angry. I had a chip on my shoulder by that time because I felt I should have never been arrested. I wasn't there. You know, there was no sense of personal responsibility. Also in it, it's weird because then when I remember getting into juvenile hall, that became like my excuse. This is why I didn't make it to West Point, and this is why I couldn't amount to nothing. This world has screwed me. Never even reflecting back on, I remember in high school, I took my SATs my junior year. I did terrible on it. And so I knew like there's no way I'm getting to West Point. I don't know anybody. So I filled out for the ROTC and the Reserve Officer Training School. And they had called my house, and my mom had picked up the phone, and she said, "Oh, no, my son's not going to, he doesn't want to do that stuff." And she hangs up and she tells me, "Why are they calling here? You're not supposed to go to Reserve Officer. You have to go to West Point." And I couldn't tell her, "There's no way I'm going to make it, Mom." But that was, no, that's our cultural, traditional Asian family that's trying to overachieve right there. But yeah, so I go into juvenile hall, get out from the California Youth Authority. And by that time, my associates, my friends were, you know, a bunch of kids that had already gone in and out, and that formed the core of our gang after that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
And so
how
at
we
some point you commit a crime. You commit probably what they consider the most heinous of crimes, I guess. You commit this crime. How old are you when you do this?
When I committed the murder, I was 23.
So that's very young.
Yeah.
So you commit this crime, you're found guilty, and then you go to prison.
Yeah, I was tried for the death penalty. Basically, I lied at trial. I had coached witnesses, and I had got rid of evidence, and I benefited from it. So I was given they found me guilty of 2nd-degree murder and given a 15-year to life sentence. In the state of California, that basically meant a death sentence. So I went into prison thinking, okay, I'm going to die in here. Like, there's no way I'm ever getting back out. So I'm just going to live the way I want to live.
So you're 23, you're in
How
there.
how old was the young man that got killed?
Min Nguyen was 27 when he was killed.
And have you ever come to terms with that? Have you made amends to the family? Have you ever spoken to them about it?
So I have not got to speak to his family. His mother never showed up to our trial. I sent a letter to her through the Office of Victim Services. This is back in 2010, 2011. This is after my Sparrow in the Razor Wire moment. And I started to figure out, like, how do I make amends and how do I give back? And that was part of my process. I wrote a letter to her and they returned it to me. They returned it, the original, back into my central file. So she had never registered, and so she never received that letter.
Mm-hmm. So when did this happen? What is the time frame?
1999 is when I committed the murder.
Okay.
And about 2010, 2011 is when I started to
transformation.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. It wasn't like the light comes on. It was just like, okay, there's a seed that's been planted, and how do I grow this and cultivate it, and you know, especially remove all these weeds and all this hard soil, and continue to till it, because it was a process.
And so when did the? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
So this changed your prison experience entirely, right?
It absolutely did. I mean, when that you know, when I talk about that Sparrow in the Razor Wire moment, after that it became, okay, what in my life got me to here. One of the first things I did is I checked in with the therapist, and I talked about my father for the first time in 25 years. And realizing like how much that had set the stage for everything else I had built around, like, you know, this living up these roles or this title of you know, known as a gang member, known as a hustler, known as somebody that's willing to do violence, and realizing that all of that is fake, that I had no true substance as a person. And then just going back and removing that on and figuring out, like, how can I rebuild myself? Like, how can I go back to that young broken little boy and build a real person from there? And that's where I would say I began my process of, you know, self-acceptance and self-forgiveness. And then in it, I also saw, once I came to terms with my father's death, or began to come to terms with his death and began to mourn him properly, I saw also the pain in the men around me, realizing a lot of them have also faced a lot of grief and loss, whether it's their partners leaving them, whether it's their children growing up without them, whether it's them just growing old and losing, like, you know, their adult, middle adult years, and knowing that they're going to die in prison, or maybe even just getting transferred to a different prison and losing their friends behind and not being able to grieve it properly. So I actually put together a syllabus and submitted it to the prison psychologist. He loved it. He signed on, and we created the prison's first ever grief and loss group. So when I saw that, and when I saw that, our first group, and saw the impact I was able to make, it suddenly gave me such meaning and purpose. For once in my life, like, I feel alive and I feel like I can make a difference. So that's where my journey kind of took a different route. And like you said, Jeff, prison by that point was not a cold, harsh, ugly place. It became such a place of, I would have to say, like, tranquil beauty, where I looked at it as like, how can I make an impact in my little forgotten corner of the world? But yet this is I'm so alive, I'm so present right here. And it's so tangible. I could see the men around me, and I could see the healing in the men around me.
So talk to me about the kind of support that you had in prison. Like, how did your therapist or the psychological team, or whatever you had in prison, how supportive were they? Like when you began to notice that you could transform your life, what were you met with?
Well, I mean, prison rules, or that prison belief is therapy. If I'm checking into therapy, that means there's something wrong. It's weak. If you see a therapist, it's weak to ask for help. And these were just beliefs. But that saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. It's like suddenly there were teachers all around me, like whether it's the books, whether it's the therapist, whether it's the other prisoners. Every day became a teaching moment for me. Whether, let's say I'm reading a book on, I want to be to treat others kindly or to speak gently. Then the next day, some person will say something and it causes me to become frustrated, and I end up arguing with them. And then I have to go back that night, like, and I had this habit where I wrote in my journal, like, what did I do well today and where could I have improved? And I continue to look at that. Okay, this is where I needed to improve. I still retorted with anger towards this person when he said something. So the next day, and it just became a process where suddenly it slowed down my mind, where suddenly someone can get me frustrated and I could see the old me would have told them off or would have said something. And now I can just take a step back, pause, and then say something gently or kindly. And it's just these teaching moments for me every day in prison. And that's just how it became.
But you still think you're going to be in there for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So when did it become clear that you could apply for parole?
Well, it was, so at the 15 year in California, you go to parole 1 year before so at 15 life, I go to parole at the 14th year, and then they could deny a person parole anywhere between 3 to 15 years, 3, 5, 7, 9, 15, something like that. And I saw around me men that had gone to parole board multiple times. With each time they go to parole board, they're given a transcript, and there were guys with like 6 or 7 transcripts or 8, because they had gone so many times, and everyone believed like this is a sham, this is fake. 2007, there came a landmark ruling that said that California had to review its process of parole, and there had to be a difference between the life without a possibility of parole and life with parole. So then it's when we first heard, a lifer got parole, but it's usually somebody in their 60s, had done upwards of 30 something years, had never gotten any write-ups. So I remember reading the court ruling, and they had this thing called factors of suitability. And it says, okay, a factor that they could find somebody suitable is they haven't, no prison write-ups, no gang member, no multiple arrests. And then factors of unsuitability, prison write-ups, terrible record in prison, multiple convictions, previous records of violence. I fell under all those categories. So even in something, I was like, this does not apply to me. They'll never let me go home. And it was just still there. But then when the process began for me, it wasn't even about going home. It's like, I found this freedom already. I am free right now at this moment. And whether they let me go home or not, I see where I can make a difference. So I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be at this moment.
So at some point you get out, they check all the boxes, you get out. What happens?
What happened? Well, I guess life begins out here on a crazy note. I mean,
because you spent a considerable amount of time in prison already. So when you get out, is your family intact? Like, what happens to you?
My family is there, and I move in with my sister. My brother and I began working at my brother's real estate company the very next day. It felt like things were running at me 1,000 miles an hour. I had to relearn a bunch of tech. I remember the first morning waking up early because the house is so quiet. I'm used to the shuffling of men, the jingling of keys, and the house is quiet. And I think I slept maybe 20 hours that first week, because I was staying with my brother the first week while we're getting the living situation situated. And since I didn't have a car, I stayed with my brother and their house was so quiet. So I remember getting up, and I just wanted, like, a little cup of coffee. and I couldn't figure out how to work the coffee machine. There were too many buttons. I was like, where is just instant coffee and hot water? Like I couldn't, yeah. TV, there's 200 channels, and I said, I just want to watch, you know, a football game, and I can't find the channel for a Sunday football game, and I have to ask. So it's learning process on just little things like that, where I can look now, okay, this is funny. You know, the next day they took me to my brother and sister-in-law practice yoga, so they took me to a hot yoga studio, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I have to look around to see the moves, but there were so many women with the tight yoga clothing, and I felt like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to look. Like I felt very uncomfortable, but I have to do the stretches, and so it was like all these things coming at me like that. But then, you know, also one thing I did not realize, yeah, there's the challenges with tech, but I think the challenge that I did not see coming, or I would have to say that I totally underestimated, was just the challenges of family dynamics. I saw that I had evolved and changed over those years. And I had a way of speaking with people, and I had a way of being able to slow down and just, you know, still speak kindly. And I saw the dynamics between my brother and my mom, or my sister and my mom, or my brother and sister. I go, they've never resolved this. Just I see the same thing. We were talking like this 22 years ago, or even 16 years ago. And in arguments with me, that I think they only saw me as one way. Like, this is Quan is that same person. They only knew me as that person. They did not know me as a different evolved person. So there were conversations and there were conflicts we have where I have to assert and lay my boundaries, and I think it made them uncomfortable. And so we had really difficult conversations, because, you know, in there, then we practice, okay, I messages and how you speak back and how you lay your to effectively communicate. And I'm trying everything I learned in there, and I see it's not working, it's not landing, and I'm feeling flustered and like, crap, this is not working with them. But then when I realized, okay, I had opportunities to work on myself, and the men in there had opportunities to work on themselves. So I saw how we changed the culture of the prison yard from like one of violence and anger to one of, you know, like, hey, dignity and respect for each other and communicating effectively. And coming out here thinking, okay, I'm no longer in prison, people are going to talk perfect to each other, and it's not. It was totally different. So I saw that happen.
So tell us about hooking up with Defy Ventures. Tell us about your writing the book, and then let's kind of lead to the fact that you now are an author. You have a book, and it's a book that's been well received, and people are reading it. So take us on that trajectory.
Sure. So the last prison I was at was Solano State Prison. Defy Ventures came out to California, and that was the pilot program at Solano. So when I heard about it, I go, man, this program sounds too good to be true, like entrepreneurship. And they had like a 30-page application we had to fill out. Whereas most of the time, if you want to join a group, it's a simple sign up on the wall. You put your name and CDC number. These people made us fill out an application. And when I started reading into the stuff in the application, I go, man, this is so in alignment with how I see my life. And I've always loved business. And, you know, I still, up to that point, like was reading a bunch of business books. So I signed up with them, got enrolled. I paroled before the graduation. So I stayed connected with them when I paroled, and I continued doing their work. And that's when I created my first company 6 months after I paroled. It's a commercial cleaning company. And it was, you know, largely in part to Defy's course. And I was saying, what's the opportunity? We believe in you. And I created a cleaning company. Let me see, from there, Defy expands out here to Southern California about a year and a half after I had been home. And I was asked if I would be willing to interview for a program management position to help build out the post-release program. So I said yes. So I left the real estate firm. By that time, we also had my family had created a restaurant. So I was there from the beginning, from concept to daily operations, and I was involved with that. But I walked away from both of those and joined Defy. So that was what, about almost 3.5 years ago that I
And,
came on board.
and so you were a Defy EIT, right? An
Yes.
entrepreneur in training.
Yes.
And just for our Connecticut viewers, Defy has a program in the women's prison in York that's pretty well known. So, but at the time, Defy was going through some things. So you were in the initial relaunching of Defy in California.
I was there for all of that, to go through all. I was there when all of that happened. So I got
drama.
Yes, all drama. But
what organization hasn't had its drama?
That's the truth.
All right, so tell me about the book. What about the book? So when did the light bulb go off to like, okay, let me capture some of this into a book?
Well, I gave a talk in Colorado called the One Last Talk, and basically it was the premise of the talk is, if you were to die tomorrow and if you have one last talk to give to the world, what would you say? And I gave that talk.
I like that.
Yeah,
I'd be worried about that.
It was pretty intense. So I gave the talk, and it was very well received. And in it, I also spoke about the letter that I sent to the mother of the man that I killed, and how she never received it.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that talk, and it was after that talk that I was approached by 4-time New York Times bestselling author Tucker Max. And he had asked, hey, do you really want to make a difference? Come out to Austin, fly out to Austin, and go through our process. So he has a company called Scribe Media.
I think I know. Yeah.
Our friend Craig Stanland is.
That's why I know.
Yeah, they're publishing his book.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how I got connected with Scribe, was through Tucker. Tucker tells me after I get off stage, do you really want to make a difference? What if I told you I could help you scale this out, what you did to this audience 10,000 times, 100,000 times? So I was like, yeah, how? He's like, come out to Austin, write a book. And like I said, I've always been a bookworm. I used to write as a little boy. And so I said, okay. I remember leading up to it, because Tucker sent out like these updates, like, here's some blog posts. This is how you find your avatar. This is how you find your audience. This is what you have to do. So about a couple weeks before I was supposed to fly out, this is January of 2019. I was supposed to fly out. I reached out to Tucker and I said, hey, I read everything that you sent me. Some of the stuff I've read twice. I don't think I have a story. I don't think I should go out there. And Tucker, in Tucker Max fashion, just tells me, like, Quan, shut the F up and just get your ass out here to Austin. Your story's told. And I went out there. So now, like, I went out there, and that's where that process began, January 2019.
So where are you today? Like, what's your life like today?
Let's see. Today, I am a homeowner. Today, I'm a business owner. My commercial cleaning company, I have 9 employees. 6 of them are also formerly incarcerated. And I tell everyone, those are my best workers. Today, I'm the senior program manager at Defy Ventures for Southern California. We just branched we split our post-release program into 2 components. And I'm running the entrepreneurship program component part of it. So it's for men and women that have come home, that have adjusted and now have expressed an interest to build a business. Then that's where I get to help them do that part of it. Today I'm an author.
And how is it promoting your book during COVID? How is it getting the word out there? And is the book selling?
Yeah, I mean, I was doing a promotion for the first week of sales back in, the book launched September 15th. And that first week of sales, I said every book that's purchased, I will match and donate to a person in prison. Because that was one thing I knew, like, okay, I wrote this book for people in prison. That's my target audience, but that's not my customer. I can't sell to them. There's no way to market to them. And then I would not feel comfortable marketing to the families of the incarcerated. So that's what the promotion we did. We ended up selling enough books that first week that we could donate over 1,800 books in the prison. The feedback I've gotten quite a bit is people say, hey, this book is more than just for people in prison. Or they say, like, we all live in prisons. And so I've been told quite a bit from people that have read the book that the lessons I've given in there are very applicable to people out here, because everybody has some type of prison. But so now it's, for me, figuring out how I can continue to, get books into prison. Like another organization reached out to me 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. Yeah. They have a way to bring books into Wasco, and they said that they had 90 participants and they were fundraising to bring books in. So I said, okay, if you purchase half of them, I'll match the other half to donate in. So that happened, and we just got 90 books to 90 men at Wasco. I mean, like, then some other organizations purchased to donate into Folsom Prison. So it's like little organizations that have ways to get into the prisons, or like have connections with the librarians. They usually reach out to me, and we get that set up, and they reach out to me on my website.
Tell me about forgiveness for yourself. Have you forgiven yourself, and what does your redemption look like or feel like? And do you feel that you've forgiven yourself?
Yes. I love this question. Yes, I have forgiven myself. In prison, when this process began for me, and I was in the midst of the process, I was in this group, and there was an exercise we did where we wrote on slips of paper, like, they basically, like, who are you? The exercise was called Who Am I? And I'm writing in there who I am. You have to describe yourself, like one word descriptors. And we wrote, like, I'm a son, I'm this and this. One of the words I wrote on there was murderer. And so during the exercise, they asked us to look at one of the slips of paper and throw it away and imagine that word is not me anymore. What does it feel like? And when I got rid of that word murderer, and just the feeling, I go, why do I hold on to this? Why do I continue to hold on to this? Yes, I committed murder, but no, I am not a murderer. Two different things, like very subtle, but it's two different things. And I just realized,
very different things. Yeah.
I don't think it's so subtle either.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just us, but it's just,
I understand what he means by the subtlety of it.
Yeah, but we go through this all the time, even with ourselves. Are we criminals, or are we some people who committed a crime?
Yes. And it was, for me, I go, this is still a form of self-pride. Like, why do I hold on to it? Am I, especially if I say I have reaffirmed my faith in the church, and I said, if our church says that we are forgiven, like, who am I to say that I cannot be forgiven? That's, like,
God has already forgiven you, right?
Yes. So, and that's so for me, it just became this big weight lifted off of me. So yes, I have forgiven myself, and in doing that, it just makes me so much more forgiving of people in the world around me, because who am I to even judge anyone when I can come to terms with this? Like, what can somebody say or do, and how can I judge them for it when I've done the worst of the worst?
Mm-hmm. But what is your redemption path like? Like, because I know for my own self, people love to remind you of what you've done. Like, there are people who are just going to think that you've not paid enough, you've not suffered enough, you've not served enough, you just haven't done enough, and you have to sort of say, you cannot allow their whatever that is for them to deter you from your story. And so that's why I asked you, what is your redemption walk like? Because people will try to drag you back to that space, and it takes a lot to not.
I get out in front of it right away. I said, on January 15th, 1999, I shot and killed a human being. So I let them know, like when we get who are you? When you first meet somebody, like, okay, who are you? What type of work you do? How do you get involved? And I usually get that out right away. I let them know, and then it's in that moment. So it's really up to them if they're. I've had people just, I could see it. They don't want to associate with me, and that's fine. Like, so for myself, I'm even sure like people that might hear just go, this guy should have never been home. He killed somebody in cold blood. And, even when I went to my parole hearing, the DA said, that I should have, under all intents and purposes, that what I admitted, I should be on death row. And I could say, yeah, you're absolutely true. And I could be killed or I could be executed, but how does that change anything? Like, how does that bring healing to the world? Like, I just look at it as I can make an impact now. And let's say, like, okay, I've got, let's say that first week we got 1,800 books in the prison. So let's just say I become very grandiose and I can change 1,800 lives or whatever, or however many lives can be affected. I know like every single one of those will still not amount to the living, breathing human being that I took off the face of this earth. But I look at it like, okay, this is my part in giving back to the world. And that's just how I want to approach it.
Okay.
So you're still with Defy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of your one of your defining pieces. In order for Defy to work, for people, they have to commit to lives of entrepreneurship, or at least they have to. That's the business plan that they present, and then they have to present it like it's kind of a Shark Tank thing, right? How's that working? I mean, when people come out, are there really opportunities available to them to be entrepreneurs? I mean, one of the things that we know is that the vast majority of startups fail even if you haven't gone to prison. So what's the experience like? And do people understand the odds that are kind of stacked against them? Not even because they've gone to prison, but this is tough. It's tough to make it when you get out of prison.
Yes. So the journey of entrepreneurship with the lessons of grit, resiliency, pivoting, what we found is the vast majority of our EITs that come home do not go on to create a business. And we're perfectly fine with it because they still use the lessons of entrepreneurship in their reentry journey. We found that they come home and go, oh, like one of the things that we used to do is called the 50 asks, is 10 asks a day, 5 days a week. So an ask is when you come home, you're submitting a resume, you're writing a cover letter. So they look at this as, it's not you're giving one resume, go to a job interview and you get the job. No, you have to do 50 of these a week to get a job. So they look at it differently when they come home. And I've seen our numbers are by themselves are fantastic. Our 1 year numbers of going back to prison, the recidivism rate is about 7.2%. Whereas, if you see some of the studies, they say anywhere between 2 out of 3 people will go back to prison. 90-day mark for employment is 84% of our EITs that come home are employed within 90 days. Whereas I think the national average is at the 1 year mark, 60% are still unemployed. So there's something in those lessons of entrepreneurship. We see they come and they go, okay, this curveball gets thrown at them, they're okay. Life comes at them, they're okay. So it's just continuing to pivot and to learn. And we've been able to build a community of supporters, of volunteers and supporters. COVID, in its weird way, has helped us to create a virtual community. And we've been able to engage more volunteers just with COVID than we did even before COVID, because, and this is not even counting our big high profile events with 40, 50 entrepreneurs coming into prison, but just post-release, we've been able to engage. And then that makes it easier for our EITs to engage, because then a lot of times before it was in person and they couldn't get into the office, or they're paroled somewhere 2-3 hours away from the office, from the event. Now everything is done virtually and they can jump on, and then at the same time, they're learning basic business communication skills, so which are great for them for a job interview, or it's great for them to even just do work remotely.
Well, we're about to wrap this up, Jeff, because we're running out of time. So, Quan, if you could have anything, what would you want? What is the end game for you? What is the big picture? What is the dream? Do you get to think about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, if there's one thing that,
Yes, I don't
just
mean
the
that. I
other
mean,
day,
like,
last week when we see the federal execution of Bernard, and
yeah.
and I
And
saw
more to
he
come.
went in 5 months before me. He was in his group and he did not commit his murder. I committed mine. I was tried for the death penalty, and the grand end game, I say abolish the death penalty, but just to get people to realize, like, everybody can redeem themselves. Like, every human being is worth salvaging. That is what, if I could wave a magic wand, I would wave that over our United States and let people know, hey, let's everything's always about dividing each other and blaming and labeling each other. What about, like, just forgiving and accepting each other?
So, Quan, we have a link to your website and a link to buy the book up on our website, on our Facebook page, on all our social media. But why don't you hold up the book if you have a copy in front of you, and go for it. Go for it.
I gotta run upstairs. I gotta get it off the shelf.
Right. So here's your opportunity. Pitch the book. Pitch your contact information. Let everyone know where it's available and how you're available.
Yeah, they can find me, to make it easy, because I'm trying to, instead of spelling out my last name, they just type in Sparrow in the razorwire.com. It will lead right to my website. I have, like, a bunch of stuff that I uploaded there of all my prison writings. There was, like I said, I was a bookworm, and I began this process of when the book started to, a lot of people have asked me, like, what books do you recommend? But I actually started documenting a bunch of books that I was reading that I felt helped me in some way. So I loaded all of those up there.
I did that too. I did that too. People always want to know. And I used to keep a running list. I had, like, I don't know, I must have read about 30 books in 30 days or something. Because you don't have all that time.
So I'm gonna give you a quick marketing idea. I think everyone who reads your book should be called winners.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yes, they should. I like that.
Well, thank you so much. I hope you come back and talk to us again and just keep us updated on how your life is going and what you're up to and how we can help further the work that you're doing.
Okay. Thank you, Quan Huynh. Thank you, Babz. A wonderful show.
Thank you, Jeff. This is a wonderful way to end the year on a high note.
Prayers and blessings to you, my friend, and to Harry Draws, to Quan Huynh, everyone at WNHH, New Haven Independent, to Lynn Springer, Andrew Kaplan, Chloe Coppola, and all our listeners out there. Prayers and blessings for happy and healthy holidays.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, this is Babz Rawls Ivy from New Haven, Connecticut, and you're listening to WNHHLP 103.5 FM, streaming live at newhavenindependent.org.